So our next presenter is Shalini Jagnarine Azan. She will be presenting on smart hospitals. Shalini is a consultant with PAHO Health Emergencies Unit specializing in disaster risk reduction and emergency response. She's a chartered structural engineer, a fellow of iStructE, and will be on council from 2023 to 2025. Earlier this year, she was awarded the Keith Ethan International Award in recognition of her extensive and significant humanitarian work. So I'll just give Shalini a little round of applause for that.
My presentation today is going to be on Smart Hospitals project, or Climate Smart maybe, so you get a better idea. It's not smartphones or smart homes or smart TVs, where it's not that type of smart. And what I'm going to present on are a couple interventions, very simple interventions, and show you some of the benefits that hopefully you could all take away and hopefully utilize it in your own homes and businesses and future projects. So, climate smart. Why do we need smart hospitals? You have normal functioning hospitals, you're able to treat patients and apply normal healthcare services, so why do we need smart? And it's a compounded problem. One, because healthcare systems globally contribute to about 4.4% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. That's more than Brazil's carbon emissions, for example, for the year. And in addition to that, we know that carbon emissions contribute to climate change. Our small island developing states, as we've heard from numerous presentations, and our lovely word of resilience that we keep repeating over and over, it's very important for us because of the impact of climate change. Safe is in terms of specific hazards, and to illustrate some of these hazards, we would look at some examples of flooding. We have Raul from Guyana and probably a couple other colleagues. Guyana, we were discussing over lunch, Raul. We were wondering what would happen to Guyana when the ocean sea levels rise. This event, the Lenora Hospital, the one at the top on the left-hand side, is normal conditions. The one on the left flooded due to unusually high spring tides and damage of about 75 feet of their water protective barriers. The photos on the bottom is from the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital in St. Vincent, and we have a few people from St. Vincent here. It is the only general hospital in St. Vincent. So this is the only public hospital in the country that has a maternity ward. These floods occurred in 2013 on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And it was so unprecedented that even the national water supply was locked off in the country for several weeks after that event. And all of the little ladies, not little, the ladies in labor giving birth had to be evacuated in a short span of time over Christmas Day, just so that they can continue normal operations. The cleanup and the impact from things like that is quite dramatic and drastic, and we may not feel it, but if you're that person in labor, you would. This one is a more normal example of hurricanes, for example, in Bahamas. This was a Category 4 hurricane that impacted some of the islands. Less than 3 years later, I think it was, there was a Category 5 that impacted another part of the Bahamas. And the type of damage that you see here is quite typical of not just health centers, but all of the small structures, particularly those with timber roofs in those countries. Another example from Dominica, and we saw quite a few of them from Melissa's presentation in Dominica. This is one of the health centers. And here's a question for you. This is a Central Medical Stores in Dominica, so it's the only place, there's only one. It's a place where they store all of the backup medical supplies and medicines for all of the 39 plus health facilities and hospitals that are in country. All of the windows and doors are intact. This was a couple days or a couple weeks right after Hurricane Maria. Would you say that this damage is mild, moderate, or severe? Severe, okay, and you would be correct, because this is a photo of the inside of the facility. All of the medicines were lost, and the only way we could continue healthcare services in Dominica was to airlift and to get donations from neighboring countries and islands. I have to speak briefly about earthquakes, and earthquakes, in my mind, is the most severe and catastrophic natural hazard that we face. It's not as common as storms and hurricanes, but this event, this photo here on the left-hand side, was taken in 1985 following the Mexico City earthquake. This is Hospital Juarez. It was a 12-story structure, a 536 in-bed hospital. They uncovered 566 bodies following this event, about 50% of whom were medical staff or medical workers. So when an event like this happens, you don't just lose all of the services, equipment, and medicines, but you also lose the people who you need to provide healthcare services following events like these. To speak about more recent events, the photo on the bottom is from last year's earthquake in Haiti, which was not a big event, not a major hazard, but 2,200 people died. And this hospital, La Cille, is the one that was closest to the epicenter of the earthquake. The one at the top left-hand side was following the 2010 Haiti earthquake, which was a massive natural disaster in all of our lifetimes. Over 220,000 people died. It was a 7.0 magnitude earthquake that hit the capital of the country, Port-au-Prince. What you're seeing here is how you would treat all patients after that event. This was close to the border, and the hospital is on cots and tents on the outside of the facility. But it's mostly because people do not want to be inside buildings after the event. Not because earthquakes kill people, it's because of the collapse in buildings. So what can we do about it? In SMART, we decided this is unacceptable. You need to have an uninterrupted access to healthcare services. So what we're trying to do is, yes, we're trying to improve the resilience of healthcare facilities. We're trying to provide and ensure uninterrupted access. And we're also trying to mitigate and adapt to climate change and reduce operational costs. Everybody loves savings, and that's what I'm going to show you how we can achieve. The examples that I would show you on the subsequent slides are from a project that we've been doing for the last 7 years. Actually, I've been on SMART for almost the past 10 years. We've smarted at least 60 facilities. It's now gone on to smart schools and smart hotels in certain countries across at least 11 countries in the region. I'll focus primarily on the 7 countries with the gold stars. And in those 7 countries, we had assessed, prior to retrofitting, over 400 facilities. None of the facilities that we assessed in those countries we could comfortably say would be able to withstand natural hazards or be able, or they were neither green. So what is SMART? SMART is a facility that's safe and green. There is a safe hospitals checklist, which is a rapid vulnerability assessment. It helps to determine whether your facility would be able to withstand events. The green checklist is self-explanatory. It's very much like LEED and BREEAM. It's quite simple to apply. There's also something additional that we do, which is a baseline assessment tool. So we would measure the consumption of electricity and water inside a facility prior to retrofitting. So it would help to determine where are your low-hanging fruits, what are your biggest consumers, and where you could have the most savings. And then there's an economic assessment tool. So using all of the prior assessments, you would determine, these are my gaps, this is where I need to plug money into so that I can improve my rating. To look at some examples, these are just some quick snapshots of a hospital in Grenada, the Princess Alice Hospital, and then another one in Belize. It shows that we look at the envelope of the building. The first thing that we would consider is life safety. So that's always the structure. We would look at the foundations, walls, the roof, which is very important, the building envelope, so windows, doors, to make sure it's safe. We would look at emergency egress, the fire safety systems. We'd look at backup water, backup power, and then renewable and greening. So how can we make the indoor environmental quality better? How can we introduce renewable energies? This hospital, well, it's not a hospital, it's an elderly home in Grenada. I use this example because this was one of our biggest retrofits, and it was the most deteriorated or dilapidated facility that we addressed. This facility was built in 1829. So the original structure was built in 1829. It was extensively remodeled in the 1980s. And then following Hurricane Ivan, Mr. Gibbs spoke about that yesterday, the roof was lost. So actually through PAHO and Mr. Gibbs, we reconstructed the roof of that facility. This is before retrofit. You can see a lot of deterioration, probably not so clear on the photos. This is after retrofit. But to look a bit more closely on the inside of the facility, when I first started visiting here, one of the biggest problems we had at that facility was chunks of concrete spoiled concrete that would fall off of the exposed slabs and onto patients' beds. So the staff had to be extra vigilant to make sure they could shift patients and shift beds around quickly if they knew a section of concrete was going to fall on them. And a lot of people, when you ask, well, what do you want to do about it? They'd say, well, we should demolish and reconstruct, right? That's the first thing that a lot of people see. Instead, we use fiber reinforced polymer, so we were able to get back the strength and the ductility that we required without adding loads to the existing foundations. What does that mean for us in terms of mitigation of climate change? It's a 10,000 square foot building and utilizing the same things that Will spoke about yesterday, carbon calculations, just doing a quick check of if you needed to replace 10,000 square feet of reinforced concrete, that's equivalent to over 91 tons. Actually, that figure is incorrect. Using the reinforcement, that's just for concrete alone, but utilizing the figures for reinforcement, it's over 184 tons of carbon, which is over about 84 return flights from Barbados to London. It's not a lot, but it contributes. Next slide. Speaking about roofs, one of the things that we did in SMART, because it's so important, and because if you've been to a lot of disasters like Dr. Van Alphen, you would see the same things over and over. You would see damaged roofs. And anybody in your home, if you lost even a roof sheet, and it would totally devastate you and your family. What we're trying to do inside here is we published a document for buildings, timber roofs that would withstand Category 5 hurricanes. It's accessible online, it's illustrated, it's meant for builders, it can be used by structural engineers. It gives you information on connections, on roof sheeting, on timber sizes based on the dimensions of your building and the location. So I would encourage you to please download it and utilize it on your future projects. To speak about water, water security and water safety and water scarcity is going to become more prevalent. Right now, because we haven't hit 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming as yet, we're seeing a lot of rainfall in the Caribbean. Once we surpass 1.5, that's going to change. You're going to have more droughts, except perhaps Guyana. And that's where this becomes very important. The first thing we would do when we go into facilities is we would fix leaks, because it's one of those things that people tend to ignore. So you fix leaks, you save a lot of water. We would encourage people to conserve water. So if you use less, you would need less. And then we would utilize, we would utilize low volume fixtures. So one of the things that you could do in your own home, if you don't need to replace a toilet, for example, is you could put aerators on your taps and faucets and showers. That would just minimize the amount of water that you're already consuming today. The other thing that we do is we always ensure that we have sufficient backup water storage for facilities. So normally we go for 3 to 5 days of backup water. Just an example, this is a Port Antonio Health Center. And just after we completed this retrofit and we installed the system, there was a national strike in country, the National Water Commission, and they locked off water to much of the country for about 2 to 3 days. Under those conditions, this facility, which has an average patient visitor log of about 150 to 200 patients, would have to close. But because we had our water storage system installed, they were able to remain open and functional. The other thing we do is rainwater harvesting. We've installed a considerable amount of rainwater harvesting across facilities, and we use that for firefighting purposes or flushing toilets. So that's a great use of rainwater, which helps to mitigate flooding as well, by the way. The other thing we would look at in terms of energy efficiency is, one, you would try to maximize natural lighting and natural ventilation. If you can't get that done, you would replace existing fluorescent lights to LED bulbs. LED bulbs are, on average, about 80% more efficient than traditional fluorescent lights, and you would switch non-inverter air conditioning units to inverter units, which would save a maximum of about 35% of energy. Just looking at 22 of the facilities where we did these interventions, we were able to save annually 1.8 million kilowatt hours for these 22 facilities. That is equivalent to, it's a measly amount for Barbados, 0.2% of Barbados's annual consumption, electrical usage in 2019. But if you look at a country like Dominica, that was equivalent to 1.5% of their annual usage. So small interventions go a long way, and this is only from 22 of the facilities. Another thing that gives us as well in terms of mitigation of climate change is carbon savings. So we're saving over 1,000 tons of carbon. Oh, and money. That's a lot of people like to hear money. It's over 570,000 US dollars per year across multiple countries, but it adds up. Renewable energies. This is an example of Chateaubelair Hospital. Is this the one that's close to the volcano? Right. Yes, so Chateaubelair Hospital, which is close to the volcano, the only impact we had after the volcano was ashfall. And once they cleaned it up and everything was back open and operational, we were able to provide services immediately. Of course, we had to stay closed because we evacuated everybody. But yes, so an example of PV panels on one of our facilities. And just to look at that more closely, over 36 facilities, we installed 450 kilowatts of PV backup power at facilities. Some were grid-tied, some were off-grid. These are just examples of the cost per kilowatt hour. Return on investment for off-grid system is a bit lower than grid-tied systems. But off-grid system is still the way that we prefer to go because one, your buyback from the utility company when you sell power to the grid is considerably less. The average cost per kilowatt hour in the Caribbean is about 32 cents a kilowatt hour, and the buyback is about 12 to 15 cents. So you get cheated from the utility company. So we use grid-tied systems because the other thing that gives you is additional resilience. If you did have a major storm or hurricane, usually they turn off the grid, but the other thing is you could have damage to your utilities. You wouldn't be able to access your grid-tied PV, but you would be able to get access from your off-grid. Savings on that is over 150,000 US dollars annually and 438 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Other smart upgrades, we've installed backup generators, diesel generators, and a lot of people, including our donors who are from the UK, it's UK Aid, one of the things they started talking about is we need to not use diesel generators anymore. We can't supply these things. And it's because of the carbon emissions from that. But the problem is if you no longer have a utility grid to use or you have grid-tied PV, you'd be without power unless you have generators at the moment. The other things we've done, which I mentioned, potable water storage and rainwater, over 300,000 gallons of storage we've added to over 55 facilities. And we've installed hundreds of hurricane-rated windows and doors, which aren't captured here, and/or shutters. Lastly, the impact of people. Across the 55 facilities and 7 countries, we're directly impacting the lives of 735,000 people. These are the men, women, children, and the elderly in those communities, as well as the healthcare staff who provide services from those facilities. And the last thing, I have a video to show you. It's not here. Will you bear with me for another 30 seconds to show you the video? Okay. Right. When you're looking at this video, I got this video last week, Friday, from one of our contractors. And you can press play. The question to you is, which country do you think this facility is located in? This facility is an accident and emergency, a 20-bed facility. It's a new build smart facility where we have expanded polystyrene reinforced walls and roofs with cold-formed steel. It's designed completely to withstand all of the hazards of this area: hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, you name it, we have it. We have epoxy flooring, we have wall tiles that go up to door height for infection control and cleaning purposes. The corridors are extra wide. We have backup water, backup power, off-grid PV. We have a dedicated septic tank system. We have sterilizer, mobile x-ray machine, all of the medical equipment, some vaccination fridges. So which country do you think, oh, and of course everything is energy efficient and water efficient. So which country do you think this facility is in? No, later, not you. Dominica? No. No, not St. Vincent. Not St. Lucia. Okay, so everybody's given up, right? This facility is in, don't say it, Mr. Gibbs. This facility is in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. We just completed this facility. This is actually the gentleman who's testing the off-grid PV system at the moment. We were able to design and build this facility at the Lape Hospital in Port-au-Prince During the assassination of its president, civil unrest, well, almost civil unrest, the proliferation of gangs, security situation, kidnappings, multiple natural hazards. They had the earthquake last year. They had several hurricanes and tropical storms. And the last time I was at this facility, which was just before I did my last set of snagging, we were on the roof of the operating theater. And then you'd see black smoke around because they blocked off all of the streets due to gangs. Gangs would do that regularly. And we jumped into the armored vehicle when we got away out, drove over burning tires, people were throwing stones at it. That was a regular occurrence. That is a regular occurrence in Haiti. The cost of diesel has gone up 15 times the original price from a year ago, and the port is still closed today. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Shalini.